You know what I'm making the film about?
No.
About anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism, what does that mean?
It means when people hate the Jewish people.
No way, man. The Jewish people control the world.
Yeah?
Of course.
Being an Israeli Jew, I have never experienced anti-Semitism myself, but it's a phrase that always seems to be in the air. Three words seem to appear over and over again: Holocaust, Nazi, anti-Semitism. Living in a country that was founded to give the Jewish people a safe place to live in, I found this really disturbing. So I decided I wanted to learn more about the subject.
Ladies and gentlemen,
This is Abe Foxman, the head and face of the Anti-Defamation League.
I have been lucky to have survived by miracle the Shoah.
Very nice speech, very good.
The ADL is the biggest organization in the world fighting anti-Semitism, with a budget of over $70 million a year. Abe Foxman has become the symbol of the fight against anti-Semitism in the world today. I thought he might be able to open some doors for me. So I asked him to help me out with my film. Abe Foxman was very welcoming. I think he liked the idea of an Israeli filmmaker taking an interest in anti-Semitism, and he agreed to give me unprecedented access to his organization, which has its headquarters in Manhattan.
He's doing a film, which I still don't understand what it is, but we said yes, yes, and yes. You're on the record,
Good.
okay? He's not going to hurt us.
Great.
On the other hand, he's a good journalist, okay?
I'll take
He
care
wants
of
to get, good stuff.
Foxman introduced me to some of the senior staff at the headquarters.
You can talk to him, too.
Would you say the ADL is like the biggest Jewish organization dealing with anti-Semitism?
Oh, yes, yes, in the world. Yeah, there's no question about that. Yeah, certainly in the United States, but I would say in the world. We have all of our 27 offices all over the country with their ears to the railroad tracks. It starts with an insult, a denigrating statement, and at the very top, what you have is genocide. And in between is every bad thing that can happen to somebody.
This is my grandmother. She's over 90 years old and she lives in Jerusalem. I decided to tell her about the film I am making.
אני ישראלי, כן? אני אף פעם לא הרגשתי מה זה אנטישמיות. אז אני שואל מה זה בעצם, אני בא ומנסה להבין מה זה.
נו, אז עכשיו אתה יודע מה זה?
אני לומד.
אתה לומד. זו הסבתא שלך יפהפייה, זו אני.
Her family emigrated from Russia in the 19th century because of the strong Zionist ideology. The first Zionists came to Israel, or Palestine as it was then, because they thought it was the only solution to anti-Semitism.
אנחנו ציונים נלהבים. אנחנו לא נחליף את המדינה ולא נחליף את העם בשום פנים ואופן. לכן כשמדברים על דברים כאלה, זה פוגע. זה מרגיז.
איזה דברים?
על יהודים, על אנטישמים, על הדברים כאלה.
אבל הם אומרים שיש שם הרבה אנטישמים.
איפה שמה? אז למה הם לא באים אם יש אנטישמים? אם יש אנטישמים, למה הם לא באים? עד שירגו אותם. מה?
אז למה באמת הם לא באים?
למה הם לא באים? הם אוהבים כסף, יהודי אוהב כסף. יהודי זה רמאי. יהודי זה רמאי. והוא עושה שם כסף, למה לא לבוא פה ולעבוד, אם הוא יכול לעשות שם כסף בלי לעבוד? למה לא?
שם הם לא עובדים?
הם לא עובדים, זה שאני אומרת. שם יש להם כסף בלי לעבוד, פה אם יעבדו, יצטרכו לעבוד.
איך יש להם כסף בלי לעבוד? איך יש להם כסף בלי לעבוד?
איך עשו כסף? ריבית, מלווה בריבית, ובתי מרזח פה, ויין פה, וזה שם. זה הם יודעים, יהודי יודע את הפוילשטיק האלה. יהודי יודע את הפוילשטיק האלה. אני אומרת לך, אני היהודייה האמיתית. לא כסף מסנוור אותי, שום דבר לא.
אבל את מדברת כמו האנטישמים, שאומרים על היהודים שהם לא עובדים והם עושים...
לא, אני לא מדברת. אני אומרת, הם רוצים להיות שם, שיפסום להם, עד שאולי יבוא מישהו, היטלר אחר ויהרוג אותם, יברחו. מה?
Tens of thousands of Israeli high school students fly to Poland each year to learn firsthand about the Holocaust, the worst genocide in human history, and the most terrible result of anti-Semitism. When I was in high school in the late 80s, there were less than 500 kids going on this trip in the whole country. Today, there are more than 30,000. I decided to join them on their journey and their initial preparation, which takes place in Yad Vashem.
יש כאלה תאים של השריפה, אז למעלה זה שמכניסים את הגופה והלמטה זה החומרי בעירה. יצא להם גז במקלחת, יצא גז ציקלון B. פה אנחנו רואים כבר את הגופות. אותה שהם יצאו, הוציאו להם את השני זהב מהשיניים.
ורוב מי שעשה את זה היו יהודים ששמו אותם בתוך המשרפות, את הגופות. כל אחד יגיד מה החיבור האישי שלו למסע, למה הוא רוצה לנסוע לפולין.
אני דור שלישי לניצולי שואה, ומהרגע הראשון שסבתא שלי סיפרה לי על סיפורים על השואה, ראיתי את המבט שלה, מבט שלא נסלח ולא נשכח. וראיתי מה היא מרגישה, אבל לא הרגשתי את זה גם. זה בעיקרון מה שאני רוצה להרגיש במסע, את התחושת שלה לא לסלוח ולא לשכוח.
The kids are going through a longer preparation for the trip to Poland. The school counselor is in charge of their mental preparation.
ותנסו באמת להבין את הקשר בין אז להיום. זאת אומרת, האנטישמיות זה דבר שלא נגמר. בעקבות השואה קמה מדינת ישראל, אבל האנטישמיות זה משהו שיש עד היום, וכל הזמן תקראו עיתונים, יש מקרים אנטישמיים לכל רחבי אירופה ובארצות נוספות. כך שאתם כיהודים, כדור העתיד, ככאלה שעובדים להתגייס לצבא, צריכים לפגוש גם את הצד הזה שלנו. מלבד זה יוצא איתכם גם מאבטחים, יוצאים איתכם מאבטחים. המאבטחים לא יאפשרו לכם ליצור שום קשר עם האוכלוסייה המקומית. נפגשו שם אנשים שלא אוהבים אותנו. תראו, לא אוהבים אותנו, תחשבו שאתם, סלי. גם היום, אני אומרת לכם שוב, גם היום לא אוהבים אותנו שם.
זה כאילו היכולת שלנו, שאתה יודע שאף אחד לא סובל אותך, אבל אתה גאה בזה.
כאילו מגדלים אותנו מגיל קטן על זה שאנחנו נדע שיש לנו שונאים. לא יודעת, על כל מיני דברים כאלה. ובעצם כשהילד יודע שיש לו שונאים, כאילו מה שקרה בשואה לדורות הקודמים שלו, אז זה גורם לך איזה סוג של כעס לצד השני, כאב, כעס, אפילו שנאה.
כולו יודעים ששונאים יהודים. זה משהו שגם גדלנו איתו כזה, תמיד כזה השנאה ואנטישמיות. תמיד אני לא זוכרת שפעם לא הייתה אנטישמיות.
זה יחזק בי את הישראלית שבי, את הציונית שבי ואת היהודייה שבי. אין ספק.
ידיעות אחרונות is the most popular and influential newspaper in Israel. I'm curious about the people behind the reports of anti-Semitism I read on a daily basis.
אני יודע, זה מגוחך שאני אומר את זה, אבל כולם בעייתיים. צרפת היא אנטישמית, גרמניה היא אנטישמית, המדינות בדרום אמריקה הן אנטישמיות. אני לא רוצה לדבר על המדינות המוסלמיות, זה לא מדברים בכלל. הם למעשה כולם. ליטא נשארה אנטישמית, כל המדינות הבלטיות, אבל גם המדינות במערב, אנגליה היא אנטישמית. זאת אומרת, הם כולם אנטישמים, רק כאמור, יש שקטים יותר ויש בוטים יותר. ולמה אני בכלל צריך להיות אובייקטיבי? הם היו אובייקטיביים? כלפינו לא, הם גם לא היו אובייקטיביים. מה זאת אומרת הסיפור הזה? אבל
בתור עיתונאי זה...
אין דבר כזה בתור עיתונאי. בוודאי שלא, לא במקרה כזה. בוודאי שלא במקרה הזה. מה קרה?
מה המספר?
172,345.
זה מספר שאתה לא תשכח.
אני הולך איתו כבר 65 שנים. אבא היה באושוויץ 1, אני הייתי באושוויץ 3, ואמא הייתה באושוויץ 2 בבירקנאו.
Noach is over 80 years old and is making sure that the future generation of reporters will be just as committed as he is.
ירידה זה פחות כותרת מעלייה? פחות. אז עלייה זה טוב.
עלייה זה לא טוב, עלייה זה רע.
עלייה זה טוב לעיתון.
בדיוק. והנתון הזה מי סיפק אותו?
זה הגיע מסקר של הליגה נגד השמצה בארצות הברית. בהחלט שווה לתת לזה מקום די נרחב בעיתון.
The headline in the Israeli paper was quite worrying. I wanted to see how the Anti-Defamation League actually fights anti-Semitism.
Where the hell is he? Where is everybody? Where's the secretary?
They're coming in now.
Thank you. They're going to come in. Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Have a seat and say hello. Introduce yourself.
Joel Levy.
Hello, Yoav.
Yoav, very nice to meet you. Let me give you a card.
Thank you.
Okay.
No?
You don't have to button your...
Why not?
The working session.
Okay, so it's working.
So the reason I'm asked to sit with both of you is what looks like a spike in anti-Semitic and racist activities or manifestations. Now, New York seems to be at the center, or at least getting the attention. Where do you see it? How do you see it?
Well, I've had a lot of meetings with the police department and last week with the mayor to talk about this. There is a wave. There's no question about it.
I don't know if it's attached to the time of the year, maybe attached to the presidential election. I'm not quite sure why we're saying it here.
Do you have enough resources to deal with all this stuff?
No. We're flooded every day with these things all over the country. It's a very big problem.
According to the ADL reports from the last couple of years, the average number of anti-Semitic incidents in the US is around 1,500 a year. I'm hoping Joel Levy can help me find a case I'll be able to follow.
What we'd like to do is to follow a case.
I understand, yeah.
Because, every film needs like a drive. Once we have like a case that we can follow, so that would be great.
We're going over the fresh data collected over the last couple of weeks to see if there's anything I will be able to film.
We have received in the last week or so someone who employment case, someone who wasn't able to take days off for the holiday, someone who is a school teacher and wanted days off for Shavuot, someone who is a nursing student and had some issues with taking time off as well as with taking time off. We also got a phone call from someone who was complaining about a website that had anti-Semitic remarks on it.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who was complaining about an article in the newspaper who they thought had anti-Semitic undertones. And that seems to be the roundup.
And that's what we've had in the last 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Those are the kinds of incidents that we've had recently. 5 in 2 weeks. So there's no way to predict.
There wasn't anything suitable from the last 2 weeks. So Joel Levy tries to help me to find a case.
What they're looking for is an incident that they might be able, and they will do all the contact work, but an incident they might be able to follow, to actually see something that has happened, to go to the site, to talk to people there, to show what has happened, the impact on them, how we interact with all of that, and so on.
Assemblyman Hickind has a lot of Jewish voters in Brooklyn, and he suggested a case for me.
I had a very interesting case. Just last week, a woman went to a funeral not too far from here, thousands of people. And she heard a police officer on the phone say something to someone else, something very derogatory about the Jew something to somebody. This woman was at the funeral, she heard this. She was so upset, she wrote me a letter, I can show you the letter, and she called me. Yeah. Okay. Is this the only letter? Yeah. Okay. You want me to read part of it to you? Actually, you could look at it. I overheard a very disturbing conversation that a policeman had on his cell phone. I heard him say very loudly, I wasn't even standing close to him, quote, "I'm just finishing this Jewish shit." Sorry for using this kind of language, but this is the exact quote. I was so offended by the vulgar language, which is never appropriate, etc. And she goes on. I made it that the police officer called the woman. He apologized on the telephone.
Hicken thought it was a good case, but the police wouldn't let the officer go on camera, and the Jewish woman seemed to be satisfied that the policeman had apologized. I realized that it might take some time to find a suitable case to film, and the kids had just finished their preparations, so I had to join them and fly to Poland. The man with the blanked out eyes is an Israeli Secret Service agent, whose identity we are not allowed to reveal.
במידה ועכשיו קורה איזה מצב ששומעים איזשהו פיצוץ, לא משנה כרגע מה שאני מבקש דבר ראשון, כולם לשבת או לשכב אפילו במעברים כמה שיותר מהר, בסדר?
Traveling around Poland today, it's hard to imagine what it must have looked like over 60 years ago. But the guides help the kids to visualize and feel how it was under the Nazi regime.
יסמין, את היא מבחינתנו המודל של אמא של דנקה, את תיכנסי מתחת למדרגות שם ליד העצים ואנחנו נצלם אותך.
הייתה ילדה בשם דנקה שהייתה גרה כאן, אוקיי? והגרמנים היו זורקים פה את היהודים מהחלון. היו זורקים אותם ואתה יודע, היו מתחבאים. אז אפילו שהבנתי, אמא שלה נתפסה והיא ניצלה. מה היו עושים הגרמנים? היו זורקים אותם מהחלון פה, אתה רואה? תסתכל. היו זורקים אותם ואת החפצים שלהם והיו מחפשים אותם כי היהודים היו מתחבאים מתחת לרצפות ובארונות. אני כאילו דנקה עכשיו.
בגטו לובלין. גטו יהודי בעיר לובלין.
Izrael? No to mów po Izraelu, a nie tam gadasz po jak po chińsku. Ja myślałem, że z Chin jesteście.
Kto gada? Izraelcianie?
Pytam się skąd, a dopiero jak powiedziałem z Izraela, no to powiedziała, że tak.
English? הוא מדבר רעות על ישראל, הוא אמר שאנחנו כלבים. הבנתי. בואי כבר, מה את מדברת עם אחד כזה? רוני. למה התחלת לדבר? רוני.
שומר עלינו מהאנטישמיות, כאילו שומר, שלא יבואו מתנגשים או כאילו יעשו לנו משהו בלי ש...
את חושבת שזה יכול לקרות?
כן, זה יכול. היום בבוקר היינו 3 אנשים מבוגרים יחסית, שרק שמעו שאנחנו מישראל ודפקו לי פרצופים ואמרו שאנחנו קופים וחמורים ועוד שנייה כאילו היה מכות שם.
הם לא אמרו שום דבר כזה.
לא?
לא?
הם כן.
לא?
Go to your rooms right now. Right now, go to your rooms.
Oh, sorry.
Right now.
אותו יורים.
What happened here? What are you
משהו
doing?
מעניין?
Excuse me. We are not vlog. We have some other guests here. I know that the kids, but you have to understand us. We have some other guests here. They are coming down and then they are staying tired. We won't pay for it.
Although the days in the Poland trip are long and exhausting, the kids still have a lot of energy when they get back to the hotel.
Quiet, okay? Cicho, cicho. But close the window and stay in your room, okay?
מה? למה אתם לא יוצאים?
Yes.
לא קשור לאיפות, מה, הייתי יוצאת. יש ניאו-נאצים, כאילו פה בפולין, שיש סכנה, יש לנו סכנה, כי נגיד הם יכולים לדפוק לנו בדלת בלי שנדע מי זה, ויכולים להתחיל לזרוק דברים מהחלון.
זה מה שנגיד הסבירו לנו בארוחת ערב, הביאו לנו תדרוך, שתכלס אנחנו לא במדינה אוהבת, אנחנו במדינה יחסית עוינת. נגיד אם יגלו איפה אנחנו עשינו לנו פה הפגנות בחוץ, או אבנים זרקו עלינו, ונגיד לפני שבועיים נכנסו לי פה שיכורים כאילו ניאו-נאצים, התחילו לדפוק פה בדלתות ויחפשו יהודים. ככה כאילו הסבירו לנו אתמול בארוחת ערב.
מי הסביר?
השב"כ, תשמע, הוא דפוק, אנחנו אוכלים בסבבה, פתאום הבא יש לי כמה דברים בשיא העדינות. אתה רואה כזה, אחד כזה, אשכנזי חמוד כזה, פתאום מתחיל לדבר איתך על ניאו-נאצים וזה, כולם היו בשוק, לא יכלו לסיים את האוכל.
סך הכל בשביל הביטחון שלנו, אז כאילו, אסור לנו לצאת, ישר אחרי ארוחת ערב אנחנו צריכים להיכנס לחדרים.
למה?
כי הם אנטישמים.
הם לא הכי אוהבים אותנו.
בדיוק.
ישר אנחנו נכנסים לשדה תעופה, זה קולט שם חיילים, הולכים כמו במשטר הנאצי. חיילים הולכים לך כזה, ישר יש להם כזה פרצוף כזה, רע כזה. אלה שדפו לנו את הדרכונים שלנו, נראה כמו קציני SS.
As the kids were facing anti-Semitism in Poland, or at least feeling that they were, a case was reported in Brooklyn that seemed suitable for the film. According to the report, a Lubavitcher yeshiva school bus, full of young children, had been pelted with stones as it was making its rounds dropping off children. One of the stones had crashed through a window where one of the children was sleeping and landed in the aisle between the seats. A second stone broke a window and barely missed two other children. Two mothers witnessed the incident and gave descriptions of a group of black youths between the ages of 10 and 12.
So were you scared? Were you scared?
I was worried for the kids. I was worried for the kids more than for me.
What, all of a sudden you heard like a big noise? How was it?
Big noise in two windows. Well,
so where's the back?
In the middle, on the side.
And the kids started to shout or what? No, they were quiet?
They were sleeping. The 3-year-old, they're sleeping on the bus.
Was going back from school. Crazy, huh?
Crown Heights is a mixed neighborhood of Jews and blacks. In 1991, there was a lot of tension between the two communities, leading to the Crown Heights riots, which went on for 3 days and resulted in many casualties. This is Binyamin Lifshitz, the local reporter in Crown Heights.
Maybe put your arms like,
Folded?
Yeah?
I'm not a poster boy.
He was the first to report the incident.
Not a big, strong guy. See, where the rocks went into the bus over there.
Wait, can you go back to that? And, I mean, most of the crime incidents in Crown Heights are targeted at Jews?
It's always been known throughout the course of history, Jews are soft targets. We've been the victims of so many major incidents, genocides and catastrophes and Holocausts and everything. It's just the way we are. We've always been victimized. When a black guy sees two people walking down the street, a black person and a Jewish person, his choice to attack someone will not be a black person. Because a black person, you never know. What is that guy? Does he carry a knife? Does he carry a gun? A Jew is a soft target. It's always been known like that, which is why we always encourage to walk in pairs, which is why we don't walk so much outside, like at night, so to speak, alone.
I thought I should speak with some of the blacks in the neighborhood to see what they feel about anti-Semitism.
I mean, like, there we interviewed this guy and he told us if there's gonna be like a Jewish guy and a black guy walking in the street, and you know somebody wants to rob, they would go for the Jewish guy because like he's an easier target.
Actually, no, he's wrong. They would actually go for the black guy because you go for a Jewish guy, you get more time.
You get more
like
time.
the lawyers, the judges will actually give us more time if we rob someone of another race.
They're going to classify it as a hate crime.
Blacks rob each other because you get less time.
So it's like a practical thing, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of wisdom behind
and
it.
honestly speaking, like, if you wanted to rob a Jewish person, like, why would you rob a Jewish person? Like, you don't never see them with nothing that would make you want to rob them. Like,
yeah, especially them up there. They basic, simple. They don't have nothing. And most people
like, how could you target out a Jew person like when all of them dress the same? Like, everybody dressed the same. They all look the same. So,
and I lived around here 35 years. I have never seen a Jewish person get robbed in this neighborhood.
Never. But there are kind of incidents between blacks and Jews, right? There are some issues.
Well, it ain't really issues. It's like favoritism. They get treated better.
Yeah,
like the police will treat them better.
Yes, they do.
If I'm arguing with a Jew, the cops gonna come to me. They're not gonna bother them. They're gonna think I'm the aggressor. They're not gonna think they're the aggressor because they already have like a perception that Jews are more holier than black people.
Let me tell you something, another thing, you know, they are supposed to be the chosen ones, but they be in a welfare office and a Section 8 office. They the first ones to get any kind of bargain deal on anything. They're the first ones to get any kind of discount, or they know the system very well, okay? A lot of times they have all this money coming in the household, but somehow they always figure out a way to manage getting Section 8 or public assistance. Whatever services is available, trust me, the Jewish people are the first ones to find out about it. They're the first ones to utilize it.
Actually, they're part of the mind control system that they use through television and the media. The higher ups.
That right there is in a book called The Elders of the Protocols of Zion. That was in like 1898. They was talking about how the Jews will use TV and media and propaganda to control the world and take over the world. So little things like that just, oh man. Who wrote that book? It was a Russian who wrote that book too. Whoever's watching this, Elders of the Protocol of Zion, read it. It gives you an idea, the blueprint to take over the world. It is.
They're implementing it right now.
It's actually, when you read it, they say it's false. But when you read it, you see everything coming to light.
The Protocols of the Elders of Zion describes how a group of all Jews sit around the table plotting conspiracies to take over the world.
But that's considered to be like a really anti-Semitic book, you know.
It is anti-Semitic to a certain. It's really not anti-Semitic.
It's not anti-Semitic.
It's like people keep saying things and they really don't know what they're talking about.
If somebody's telling the truth, if somebody's telling the truth about something, why does it have to be anti-Semitic? Because it's not in the Jewish people's favor. It's not anti-Semitic. It's just somebody being honest.
Facts is what it is. Bottom line.
No, but just to put things straight, like this book, the books of the elderly of Zion, the Protocols
that was
of
actually,
the
they said it was written by a Jew actually, so it's really not anti-Semitic.
But this book was like kind of a fraud, you know.
Yeah, they say it's a fraud.
There wasn't such a thing, you know. It's like a bunch of people sitting together running the world, you know. This is kind of bullshit,
but
you know.
But you said that's bullshit.
That is not true. No, this is like a false book.
That's not bullshit. As far as like a bunch of people sitting together running the world. The United Nations is a bunch of people sitting together running the world. So how could you say that's bullshit?
No, it's different, you know, because.
All right, so
exactly, there's no difference.
You said some like pretty harsh stuff about like, you know, Jewish people and stuff like that.
No.
Hold on, you gotta listen.
Let me finish. I mean, like, so maybe when they like see you guys on the street and they feel like afraid or they feel tension, there is something, you know, like.
That goes to what I was telling you before. They don't know us. They never took time to get to know us. She was telling you that they separate themselves from us.
They don't want to know us.
So when you don't want to get to know someone, you would never.
Speaking,
you can't.
You're trying to manipulate the conversation.
No, I'm just asking.
No. Because we told you we have no problem with them.
Hold on. First of all, why wouldn't we be afraid of them? Also, there's a misunderstanding and there's a lack of communication. How do we know that we're safe amongst them? I mean,
Talking with them made me realize that living in a mixed community can create a lot of tension that can be easily inflamed. I went to talk about the situation with Rabbi Hecht, one of the leaders of the Jewish community and Commissioner for Human Rights.
Even the attack on the school bus. Not every time when somebody calls somebody with a name that you're a Jewish so-and-so or you're black so-and-so, does that mean that I am a racist in heart or an anti-Semite in heart, or that I'm doing it only because of anti-Semitism?
If 5 crimes happen,
5 blacks against 5 Jews, it has to be anti-Semitism. Why? Listen, even if the reason why I hit that Jewish kid is because I knew that he's not going to fight back, or the white woman in this neighborhood was a Jewish woman, I stole her pocketbook because I know it's going to be easy prey. That's not called anti-Semitism. Now again, you want to put it into some category and lock the guy up for a longer period of time because he saw a weak woman that he grabbed it. But again, I think we have gone a little too far.
Many of the anti-Semitic incidents reported by the ADL happened to Orthodox Jews, since they are the easiest to spot. So I was pretty surprised by Rabbi Hecht's response.
Let me tell you guys, I am suspicious when a guy makes a living from a particular situation. So if there's a particular film crew that make a living from blood, that's right, I'm suspicious every time they show blood. If a guy is created only because of anti-Semitism, I'm nervous about his reports. Are they accurate? He has to create a problem because he needs a job.
So you say, like, I mean, the ADL is not like a credible organization, or?
I really can't pass judgment on other organizations, so we'll leave it that way. I'll be politically correct. But listen, clearly the ADL has been responsible in certain areas to flare up things as much as they've helped. Now, of course, having said that, now I'm on the ADL's blacklist now, so Mr. Foxman is not going to come to my home for dinner, but what should I tell you?
An important part of the ADL's work are the international missions, and Foxman decided to allow me to join him. Every year, a few ADL board members and contributors get to join Foxman as he travels to various countries, meeting heads of state, politicians, and other influential people who can help in the fight against anti-Semitism. It's like an organized tour, but apart from visiting museums and other tourist attractions, the chosen ADL members get to join Foxman in taking an active part in the struggle against anti-Semitism.
You have to debate what is proportionate when someone attacks you.
You are serious people, and you're here for serious business, and you're going to see the Holy Father, and everything the ADL does is serious business.
The police escort along the way made me realize I was traveling with some pretty important people.
I'm seeing the Pope tomorrow. Brody Friday. That's the name, yeah. Good job. I can tell you that
beautiful. How gorgeous.
I'm curious about how Mr. Foxman gets to meet all these important people. Why would all these ambassadors, politicians, and heads of state take the time to meet him?
It's their perception of the power of the Jewish community, which is one of those sides of the anti-Semitism, which is it's a very thin line, you know. They believe we are more powerful than we are. I've always said Jews are not as powerful as the Jews think we are, nor as powerful as our enemies think we are. We're somewhere in between. But they do believe, to some extent, that we can make a difference in Washington, and we're not going to convince them otherwise. So how do you fight this sinister, conspiratorial view of Jews without using it? Look, when the United Nations comes to its General Assembly, we meet with 40 heads of state, foreign ministers. Why?
I think I got it. It's like a poker game in which Foxman bluffs the other side into thinking that Jews have more influence and power in Washington than they really have. The downside is that the idea of Jews being so powerful can result in envy, even hate. Foxman has a very close relationship with the Israeli government.
All right.
Oh yeah, a couple of times.
Israel relies on Foxman when it comes to issues of anti-Semitism. And being the Jewish state, anti-Semitism is always on the agenda.
Hi, Abe. I wanted to ask you, since we met last, about the issue of Venezuela. Because I heard voices kind of saying it's not so bad, and Latin America is not so bad, but I'm not convinced. And the question
You
is,
have good reason not to be convinced. You have good reason. It is getting worse.
Right.
And little by little, as long as oil money works.
I'm told that by our experts, it's the only, except for Iran, it's the only government-propagated anti-Semitism today around the world. It's a
Formally, right.
This is
First
quite scary.
within the country and then outside.
So are you pressing in any way?
We've talked to Jesse Jackson, who has a relationship, but it's not for camera, but there are other plans.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
So it is, we have a very beautiful view from here.
The first example of what Foxman is talking about was a meeting with a special advisor to the Ukrainian President Yushchenko. The Ukrainian government would like to distance itself from the embrace of the Russians and strengthen its ties with the West, most especially the United States. They believe that the Jews can become their allies in the US Congress.
We come to celebrate your democracy, but we also come with mixed feelings. The history of the Jewish people in this country is primarily one of tragedy. We would like to see a more active, a more aggressive approach to dealing with issues of anti-Semitism. It took a long...
Foxman is concerned about the Ukrainian government's comparison of the famine in the Ukraine before World War II with the Holocaust.
The one thing that you need to be sensitive about is not to link it with the Holocaust. Be careful that it not be played as your genocide, our genocide, because that will be counterproductive on all sides.
We, of course, respect Holocaust, and I understood your message, and we try to be very, very diplomatic.
Here it is.
I was impressed by the way Foxman handled the meeting, but it also raised some questions for me.
He was kind of pushing him a little bit, huh?
He was kind of what?
Pushing him.
Yes, of course.
It's always like that? Yeah?
Of course.
I wasn't sure how bringing up things that had happened over 60 years ago had any relevance to fighting anti-Semitism today.
In order to combat it effectively, I think that you have to take responsibility for anything that happened in the past and then reach the present and then go forward.
With your husband, when you quarrel, sometimes you need to give some slack to get what you want. No? You always
I bring
tough?
up everything from the past, 50 years, what his mother did. Absolutely not. No, that's not the American Jewish way. I don't know about the Israeli Jewish way.
Give them the guilt trip.
That's absolutely. We need to play on that guilt.
I asked when having a quarrel, whether she give you some slack sometimes to make up, but she said no.
I'm always wrong and she's always right.
But wait a minute, do I ever forget anything in the past?
Never. Suzanne will tell me 20 years ago what I did wrong. If we have an argument now, but 20 years you did this. I said, but Suzanne, it was 20 years.
Wait a minute, but do you know why? Because he has not stood up and taken responsibility for that behavior.
The guilt trip she's giving you, does it help?
No.
So maybe the guilt trip we're giving them is not the right solution. Maybe we should give them some slack and say, okay, let's be friends. Not forget the past, but kind of be a little bit more, liberal.
Moderate.
Yeah.
Something we happen to. I have no.
The guilt of the father should not be visited on the sons, and it's true. Of course, it's true.
I agree with you.
It's true. You have to.
You cannot let it go down, but you can't keep playing on it as heavily as some people do. moderate.
But the ADL is like one of the people who plays quite heavily.
No, we're moderate.
No, ADL plays heavily. There is not a speech.
I'm feeling.
There is not a speech.
No, be careful.
I'm not talking to him. I'm not talking to him. What is he? What are you, Assad or something?
We democracy. We free democracy. We're allowed to say whatever we want.
I was fortunate. I was in the United States. I'm passionate, believe me. I don't like as much.
I could understand Abe's sensitivity to the Holocaust being a survivor, and was moved by the support he received from the ADL mission members. But the film I wanted to make is about anti-Semitism today, and I decided to explore on my own an incident I had read about in the papers. In Moscow, a man with a knife had entered the synagogue and had started stabbing people. The incident was recorded on the security cameras.
Раздались истерические неестественные крики, когда убивает человека. Мы все бросили монету и выбежали в Европу.
The stabbing was a shocking reminder of what anti-Semitism can be. I thought I should speak with the members of the synagogue to see how they felt about their own safety.
В Израиле мы все время слышим, что есть очень сильный антисемитизм.
Где?
Здесь?
Неправда.
Что неправда?
Этого
Что
нету. Ну нету. Ну нету, понимаете? Нет его. Потом, понимаете,
почему говорят в
многие
Израиле?
евреи сами виноваты. Вот представляете, вот он работает на заводе. И он плохо работает. Его не двигают по службе, не продвигает, карьеры нет. Он говорит, это потому что я еврей. Я говорю, ну я же тоже еврей, а я главный технолог завода. Как же тебя-то, нафиг, тебя антисемитизм, а ко мне нет?
Почему в Израиле говорят, что здесь очень сильный антисемитизм?
Ну что-то надо говорить. Ну что-то надо говорить, как-то себе надо оправдывать. И все свои неудачи в жизни человек это объясняет. Вот я был еврей, вот меня притесняли, вот мне не давали дорогу. Ну хорошо, ты приехал в Израиль. Там тебя никто не притесняет. Что ж ты здесь не продвинулся?
I didn't understand. How come these religious Jews, who go to the synagogue every day and are such easy targets for anti-Semites, don't seem so concerned about their personal safety? I decided to ask the local rabbi in Kiev about it.
The truth is that for some reason secular Jews are more worried about anti-Semitism than religious Jews, if you noticed. It's not that way. It's just that on their agenda of being Jewish, anti-Semitism is not part of being Jewish for an Orthodox Jew. Part of being Jewish is not fighting anti-Semitism. Part of being Jewish is practicing Judaism. There's no mitzvah in the Torah when you practice Judaism to fight anti-Semitism. At the same time, fighting anti-Semitism is something that's important for the Jewish people, for Jewish communities throughout the world. And very often, people that are not practicing, like you say, that's where they find their thing. So they'll, express their Jewish identity in a way that they'll be fighting anti-Semitism and thereby helping the community, in its fight for anti-Semitism.
The rabbi said that it is actually an issue of identity. I wanted to know if Suzanne and Harvey Prince would agree with this theory.
Yeah, I mean, you can't film this because,
I do think that the ADL helps to reinforce our Jewish identity because we're not Orthodox and we don't have a religious Jewish life. The ADL provides a forum to be Jewish. I mean, it certainly is 99.9% Jewish, and it gives us an opportunity to explore being Jewish, to look at Jewish issues, and it does reinforce our Jewish identity.
Babi Yar, in the suburbs of Kiev, is a mass grave in which 33,771 Jews were shot after digging their own grave over the course of just 2 days in September 1941.
I think the worst thing for me, standing here, is that it could happen today.
Oh, God.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can see people being marched out of Kiev and shot.
Marilyn, I
by
need to-
some people who would decide that's the thing to do.
That's right.
Maybe they do it to gays. Maybe they do it to
That's why we have to
Russia,
support Israel.
whatever.
Israel's our insurance policy.
עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
If it was a question of the continuing existence of Israel, would you move to Israel?
Yes, in a minute.
Good for you, I tend to say.
In a minute. Because as far as I'm concerned, without Israel, there isn't a safe Jew in the world. That's the way I feel.
I agree. I agree.
So you have two people who immediately move to Israel if you have a problem.
Right.
If Israel needs, you have two people
I
right there.
joined the army. They wouldn't take an old lady, but I would be there.
So does that mean that
I'd roll bandages.
He's asking,
I don't know.
he's asking a question, the journalist.
Does that mean that you're more loyal to Israel then?
No, of course not.
That's right.
So how do you like coexist these two notions?
How do I like what?
How these two notions coexist? The fact that
Easy. You love your children, you love your husband. You love your friends equally.
Do you love your children more than you love your husband?
Of course not.
Sometimes.
But you might die for your children before you would die for your husband.
It's like the question then.
You might.
If you were in a life
Israel is the
road,
husband or the kids?
I'm sorry?
Israel is the husband or the kids?
The kids.
The kids.
The kids. Yeah, the kids.
Israel's not a
love for
child
Israel is
anymore.
love for a child. There's a love for a child that different than a love for a husband.
True.
There's nothing like really a love for a child.
it's a much more protective.
Right.
No, it's a much more.
According to the ADL mission members, Israel is a child which needs their support, but is also their insurance policy in case something terrible should ever happen again. But at this particular moment, this insurance policy was busy being a teenager making its way to Majdanek concentration camp near Lublin.
אני מדבר פרי עיניים אליי, אני רוצה לראות את הרצינות דרך העיניים שלכם. אנחנו עוברים לשלב הבא של הרצינות, השלב הבא של תשומת הלב, אנחנו מגיעים למיידניק.
המסע האמיתי מתחיל עכשיו, מה? עכשיו הולכים לראות את כל הדברים המוחשים. עד עכשיו רק ראינו כאילו, אתה יודע, בית כנסת ודברים כאלה, עכשיו הולכים לראות ממש איך השמידו אותם, את המשרפות, הכל. יהיה קשה.
והייתה שם מפקדת של אפל, שקראו לה בריג'יט הצמאת אדם. בריג'יט הצמאת אדם הייתה הולכת, רוכבת על גבי סוס, באזור המקסים הזה של לובלין, עם שוט ברזל שמחובר אליו כל מיני ברזלים כאילו כמו שאתם רואים לפעמים בסרטים של המלחמות, ופשוט עוברת על גבי אסירים ומכה אותם.
סתם ככה?
סתם ככה. אוקיי? בריג'יט הצמאת אדם שהייתה מפקדת זה. עכשיו, כמו שהסברתי קודם, שליש מהנרצחים פה נרצחו בגז, ושני שליש פחות או יותר נרצחו על ידי התת-תנאים שהם היו צריכים לחיות פה.
לכו על זה.
כן, נכון.
אז ייכנסים לסגור את הדלת.
מה אתם מדברות?
מאוכזבות. לעצמנו.
למה?
סתם, קצת קשה להקל. כאילו, אנחנו מסתכלים על זה, אני אישית מסתכלת על זה ואני לא... קשה לי להבין איפה אנחנו נמצאים, עדיין. זאת אומרת, רואים, אבל לא מפנימים. מאכזב, אתה חושב כאילו, מה, אתה פה עושה את הטעות, אתה אין לך רגשות או משהו. אתה מרגיש כאילו אתה מזלזל בדבר, וזה ממש לא ככה.
This was my first time in Majdanek as well, and I could relate to the way the kids felt. The horrors were almost impossible to digest. But the kids just couldn't accept the fact that they wouldn't become emotional after all the preparation they'd been through.
אני חושבת שאם מוצאים מדריך למסע כזה, אז הוא אמור לדעת, לרגש ולדעת מה היה כאן. אני חושבת לא יודעת, אני לא מספיק בזה.
בסדר, אוקיי.
אני לא מספיק ממצא את עצמי במסע.
את לא צריכה, אבל את לא.
אני רק ההתחלה, אוקיי.
קחי את הזמן שלך, את לא צריכה להרגיש רע עם עצמך שאת לא מצטמרת כל הזמן.
אני מרגישה רע עם עצמי שאני מרגישה שאני לא ממצא את עצמי.
לא, אבל אז אני אומר עוד פעם, את חובה עכשיו הרבה דברים, תני לעצמך את הזמן, זה מה שאני מבקש, לא יותר מזה. ובאמת אני נותן לך טיפ שתמשיך לעקוב אחרי הגברת בהמשך, אוקיי? בסדר? תמשיך. יאללה, גייז, עירוני א', אנחנו ממשיכים, בואו. ופה, ללא טקס קבורה וללא כבוד אחרון, נשרפו מושמדי פה בתנורים האלה, האפר שלהם שימש לדישון אחר כך לגרמנים. הם ניצלו את היהודי מהעבודה שהוא נכנס במחנה העבודה.
It occurred to me that after seeing the almost incomprehensible horrors my people have suffered, other people's suffering might seem less significant somehow. I wondered if any of the kids felt this way too.
יכול להיות שזאת הבעיה שלנו בעצם. שיש לנו את הרף הגבוה הזה. ופתאום אנחנו רואים בחדשות שהרסו נגיד לערבי את הבית, שצה"ל פוצץ, אנחנו אומרים, לא נורא, לנו היה דברים יותר גרועים. אותנו לקחו ברכבות וגרמו ליהודים לראות ביהודים. זה כבר נראה, יכול להיות שזה...
אני דווקא חושב שאני אחרי...
כי וואלה שאני סליחה. כי וואלה שאני רואה את זה בטלוויזיה, זה לא מפריע לי, כי אני כאילו אומרת, בסדר, לא נורא, הערבים האלה יש להם הרבה בזה.
Nofar was not the only one thinking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in relation to anti-Semitism. Professor Norman Finkelstein, a Jewish academic from DePaul University in Chicago, has written a book called The Holocaust Industry, in which he accuses parts of the Jewish establishment of making cynical political use of the Holocaust.
Dr. Finkelstein, you have some visitors?
Whenever Israel faces a public relations debacle or comes under pressure to resolve the Israel-Palestine conflict, they start up this extravaganza called the new anti-Semitism. As it's usually understood, anti-Semitism means an irrational hatred of Jews, born simply of the fact that they are Jewish. But that's not what's going on. Here it's a hostility born of the fact that the state which claims to represent them is engaged in quite brutal violence. I'm sure lots of people I meet have this, what you say, deep down inside, they have this kind of queasy feeling about Jews. I'm sure that's true. But did it have any real substantial repercussions on me in life? The answer is just no. There's a kind of pathological narcissism, navel contemplation. When you are the richest, wealthiest, most successful ethnic group in the United States, you've got the world on a platter, and you sit around and you're talking about anti-Semitism. It's just kind of shameful, I think.
At the time I first interviewed Finkelstein, I didn't realize what a controversial figure he was in the eyes of the Jewish establishment. Finkelstein, the son of Holocaust survivors, has been labeled a self-hating Jew, a Holocaust denier, and a madman. I had interviews stopped at the very mention of his name.
I know if you Google Norman Finkelstein and Holocaust denier, nowadays you'll get about 10,000 websites. Well, if I'm a Holocaust denier, I would have to be certifiably insane. I would have to be clinically insane. Because, given who my parents were, for me to be denying the Nazi Holocaust, I'd have to be clinically insane. So you have to judge for yourself. You may disagree with me, but is it your impression that I'm clinically insane? Now, if you think I'm not, then you have to wonder, why are those 10,000 websites saying that?
Recently, there's this talk about the new anti-Semitism, which is very related to Israel. And I've been heard that from Jews outside of Israel, saying Israel is the cause that anti-Semitism is now, that we are suffering from anti-Semitism.
Well, I would say that is nonsense. That comes from insecure Jews. I think people use Israel as an excuse to rationalize and legitimize, because in many places of the world, anti-Semitism is not acceptable. It's not polite, it's not proper. But if you can camouflage it, if you can find a platform of a news event, of a political discourse, then you use it. And we find every time there is conflict in the Middle East between Israel and somebody else, the level of anti-Semitism spikes. Why? Because the anti-Semites come out of their woodwork, and now they can express themselves in their anti-Semitism in what they consider a legitimate, licensed way.
Strangely enough, Foxman and Finkelstein agreed on one thing, which is that most anti-Semitic incidents nowadays fall under the category of new anti-Semitism. The difference is that Foxman says that anti-Semites found a new target called Israel, to which they could express their anti-Semitism, while Finkelstein believes that saying that is a cynical misuse of the term anti-Semitism. But attacks on the ADL seem to be coming from all directions.
So today in America, there are two professors who are saying that Jews are more loyal to Israel than to America. Mearsheimer and Wald. See, this is what Mearsheimer and Wald. Mearsheimer and Wald.
Steve Wald and John Mearsheimer are two academics from the universities of Harvard and Chicago who wrote a book called The Israeli Lobby. They claim that there is a lobby in the US whose role is to support Israeli policy even if this policy goes against the interests of the US. The role of the ADL in this lobby is to silence those who criticize Israeli policy, saying they are actually anti-Semites in disguise. Walt and Mearsheimer were invited to Israel by Gush Shalom, a left-wing Israeli organization whose head is Uri Avneri, a former parliament member and a peace activist.
I was very happy that they accepted our invitation and agreed to come here. Actually, we were a little bit afraid in the beginning that there may be some difficulty to get them into Israel, especially after what happened to Professor Norman Finkelstein, who has been arrested and kept in prison, actually, and then deported.
Steve and I have traveled all over the United States, and we've traveled all over Europe talking about the lobby. I have honestly been struck by how little evidence we've come across of anti-Semitism. This is not to say that we don't run into lots of people who are critical of Israeli policy and shake their head at what the Israelis are doing.
אבל לנו כישראלים זה לא טוב שיש לנו בעצם את הלובי הזה מאחורינו שם? כתושבי ישראל שגרים פה בעצם.
קודם כל, שאלה מאחורי מה? ומי זה אנחנו במקרה זה? הלובי הזה תומך בימין הישראלי, הוא מאולמרט ימינה, חביבם הוא ביבי נתניהו, וימינה מביבי, מעבר לביבי נתניהו, הימין הכי קיצוני. כאשר הייתה ממשלה שמאלית כאילו, היחסים היו רעים מאוד. ההתלהבות צנחה.
כוונות מאחורי הארגון הזה הן כוונות טובות, לא? מה באנטישמיות זה מטרה טובה?
אני כבר לא יודע, לא בטוח. אני כבר לא יודע, לא יודע מי משרת פה את מי. אנחנו אותם או הם אותנו. אם הם אנחנו מכתיבים להם מדיניות, או שהם, כמו שאמרת קודם, או שהם מכתיבים לנו מדיניות. אף אחד מהם לא לוחם באנטישמיות. הם לוחמים נגד ביקורת על ישראל. זה שני דברים לחלוטין שונים. כמעט שאין אנטישמיות באמריקה, זה אגדה. אין, ממש אין. לו הייתה, גם השדולה הייתה מתנהגת אחרת. אין. התופעה הזו שנקראת אנטישמיות היא קיימת רק בתקשורת הישראלית. ועל ידי כל מיני פונקציונרים יהודים בעולם שהם מתפרנסים מזה, שהם לוחמים באנטישמיות. איפה יש אנטישמיות? אין כלום. מעולם ישראל מצבה של היהודים באמריקה, מצבם לא היה כמו היום.
מה, אנטישמיות זה המצאה ישראלית? המצאה יהודית?
אנטישמיות? אנטישמיות היום? מידה רבה כן. כל אחד פוחד מאנטישמיות בגלל הזיכרונות ההיסטוריים, והיהודים מפוחדים תמיד. באמריקה היהודים, כמה שהם חזקים וכמה שהם מושלים באמריקה למעשה, הם פוחדים מהצל של עצמם. כל רגע, אחרי כל עץ, מסתתר אנטישמיות. בולשיט, אין דבר כזה. אנטי-ערבים, אנטי-מוסלמים, אנטי-שחורים, אנטי... מה שאתה רוצה. אנטישמים? פשוט אתה צריך זכוכית מגדלת שלמצוא אותם, ויש כאלה שהולכים עם זכוכית מגדלת, כמו שרלוק הולמס, ומוצאים אנטישמים.
Abe Foxman's spokesman, Ari O'Sullivan, was the last person I expected to see at the event. What was he doing here?
Look, Abe, they mentioned the ADL a couple of times in their talks, and like I told you, they were false, these things. And I went up to Walt, but he was surrounded with people. I said, listen, I'm from ADL, Ari O'Sullivan, and those two things you said about the ADL are incorrect. I got a lot of interest from the foreign press. I don't know about the Israeli media, though. Was there Israeli media here? אני מהליגה נגד השמצה. זה שהזכירו כל הזמן, ה-ADL, ה-ADL.
ואתה מהליגה.
אני הדובר של הליגה. מי אתה?
דובר בארץ?
כן, אתה מגוש.
אתה מגוש שלו?
למה הבאתם אותו?
את מי?
את שניהם.
זאת אומרת, למה הבאנו אותו? אנחנו חושבים שמה שהאנשים האלה עושים זה פשוט פעולה הכי מבורכת שיכולה להיות. לא לגבי השמצה או לא השמצה. לגבי אי פעם להגיע למצב נורמלי ומאוזן באזור הזה.
יש לכם כסף להביא אנשים כאלה פה? כי אמרו לי שגוש שלום זה ארגון קטן, שולי כזה.
גוש שלום זה ארגון קטן. אבל את הקצת כסף שיש לו, הוא מנצל לדברים החשובים ביותר. והדברים החשובים ביותר זה להגיע סוף סוף אי פעם לאיזשהו פיוס בין הפלסטינים לבין היהודים במזרח התיכון. והדרך היחידה לעשות את זה, זה לגרום שהמדיניות של מי שתומך בישראל, לא משנה מה היא עושה, שהמדיניות הזאת תתחיל להיות קצת יותר נורמלית. זה לא מקרה שהאנשים האלה הוציאו ספר שכל העולם רעש ורגש בגללו.
I don't know if the whole world was shaken by Walter Mearsheimer's book, but the Jewish establishment certainly was.
Why do two such established, credentials, respected academics engage in such a shoddy piece of work on what subject?
At the annual ADL convention, the Israeli lobby book was the center of attention. In the Foreign Office in Israel, there was a 3-day convention dealing mostly with the issues raised in the book The Israeli Lobby. Never before had the question of whether anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are the same thing seemed so important. Experts and speakers from all over the world said the same thing, that those who attack Israel are doing so simply because they are anti-Semites in disguise.
We thought people who would hate us, who would be our enemies, would be thugs and lunatics yelling kike, and instead they're soft-spoken college professors explaining to us how we have the apartheid state. We were unprepared. So let this conference draw a line in the sand. If you're an enemy of the Jewish people, then we will fight you with all our might, for ourselves and for our children and for our children's children. Who would we be if we did not? And we will prevail.
After 3 days, something happened which was more or less the equivalent of a bomb being thrown into the room.
If you came down from space, you would think, having looked at this conference, that there was absolutely no problem in the West Bank or in Gaza. One element of the reason why so many people around the world are angry with Israel is because of the continuing settlement and occupation of Palestinian land, and because Israel, which has state power, has not done enough to end the occupation. One of the reasons. Such an occupation cannot be sustained without racism, without violence, and without humiliation against the people who are occupied. Thank you.
I don't get it. I just don't get it unless you were ironic. Listen, David.
Yes.
We appreciate your work. We invited you to speak.
Yes.
But what you did today was a kind of preaching about looking for human rights that we don't have. This is more or less what you said.
There are problems with human rights in the
we
territory.
don't say
It's insinuative.
What do you say?
No,
Not
I
only
choose
that.
to say something which has not yet been said by everybody.
Just
it's
for
very
the
simple.
provocation?
No, not for the provocation, because Palestine was not mentioned
It was
in this
mentioned
conference.
all over.
Once, maybe by Gil.
It was mentioned
It was mentioned yesterday as Palestine is the anti-nation. Palestine is the one unique nation which doesn't have the right to exist. It was mentioned.
No, no one said that.
Come
on, no one said it. Don't go too
Gerstenfeld
far.
said it. Palestine
one
is the
said it.
anti-nation. What do you think that means? And where do you think that terminology comes from, the anti-nation?
What you were saying is that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are two different things.
They are two different things.
No, sometimes they are the same thing.
And it's kind of ironic, really, that I was seen by some people as a sort of wild-eyed radical, because where I come from, I'm denounced as a right-wing, neocon, Israeli-supporting, anti-Palestinian racist.
What does it say about this conference then?
Well, it says about this conference that there were some hard right-wingers there. There you go. Nobody in this conference was balanced, not one.
I don't think so.
Speaking with David Hirsch made me realize that it is very difficult to represent any other approach in the Jewish world. Those who try to say anything different are being silenced.
And Dina has a go at me for not being balanced.
You hinted too much. You were not explicit enough.
Should have modified what I meant.
Hirsch was right. The occupation as a possible reason for justified criticism was not mentioned. Many Jewish people see anti-Semitism as a force of nature. It has always been there and will always be there. It will just take on different shapes and forms. I find this difficult to accept.
This is a conference about people around the world blaming Jews as the worst human rights violators on the planet. And the people who support Israel are now under attack as supporting the colonialist apartheid state of Israel. This is a warrant for attack on Jewish people.
It is internationally recognized that anti-Zionism is sometimes anti-Semitism.
You know what?
And who
As an Israeli, this is the only thing that leaves me hope, to differentiate these two.
Why?
Because otherwise there is no hope. Otherwise, this is a doomed.
But this is closing your eyes.
This is a doomed,
You're right.
fatalistic
But you're
approach,
closing your
which
eyes.
gives us no hope at all.
No, but you see what he's doing. He's doing exactly he has the problem of the left, and here's the problem. Here's the problem. You. This analysis. This is just like the wife who's beaten by her husband, who goes to the psychiatrist and she says, "It must be something I did, because if it's not something I did, then it's hopeless. Then he's a madman." Well, you need to find something you did to cause the hatred against you. But guess what? It's nothing that you did, and it's too bad. You are in chaos, and the world is dangerous, and Islamism, funded by the Saudis, is teaching gazillions of people around the world that you are evil before you came to Israel. So this is your problem. You're exactly right, and you don't want that to be true.
Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just naive. Maybe all those people who criticize Israel really are anti-Semites in disguise. I'm heading to Chicago to speak with John Mearsheimer, co-author of the Israeli Lobby. I hope to have the courage to ask him if he is really an anti-Semite in disguise. But did you took a few minutes to question yourself when you've been blamed as being anti-Semite? Did you try to think about it
between yourself and yourself, you know, like, I don't know if you have this expression, like within yourself, like, did you take some moment to think maybe some of it was like influenced by something which is, you know, could be interpreted as like anti-Semitism?
No, because I'm not anti-Semitic, and I never had any doubt that I wasn't anti-Semitic, and I just didn't see any need to do this. My arguments are not in any way, shape, or form hostile to Jews or hostile to the State of Israel. And in fact, Steve Walt and I go to great lengths in the books to make in the book and in the article to make the case that we think the lobby's policies are not in Israel's interest or in America's interest. And we believe that the policies that we're pushing and the arguments that we're making are better for Israel and better for the United States. Now, one can disagree with that, but those arguments that we're making are not anti-Semitic, and we're not anti-Semites. Of course, it's almost impossible to prove that you're not an anti-Semite, which is one reason that this charge is so effective. I mean, how does one say, I'm not anti-Semitic, and convince people who say you are?
My best friend is
Right, that's what you end up saying, that my best friends are